This episode is brought to you by
Cry Havoc, from New York Times #1 bestselling author Jack Carr. Cry Havoc, a Tom Reese thriller. Order now.
Once he hooks the richest client of his career, Simon works quietly to keep her wealth under the radar, but soon her story begins to crack. When she is hospitalized after a car accident, Simon realizes that nothing is as it seems, and he finds himself on trial for a crime he swears he didn't commit: murder.
John, it's great to see you. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. And this is such an honor for me to do this. I can't even tell you. I have this. Is this 51st, or it's hard to keep track? And
it's hard for me to keep track. It's around 50 or 51, I think. Yeah.
Well, because I'll show people who are watching here. There's a list of all of those books. I mean,
way too many books.
Oh, I don't know about that. I mean, it's so much fun. This just arrived yesterday, so I'm not finished with it, but I'm already enthralled, already love it, just like everything that you do. And you're one of those authors. I think the mark of a great author is for someone to be able to hand me a paragraph, and I can read that paragraph and I can tell what author it came from, because they have such a unique style, and it's so enthralling from the first word. And you do that once again in here. But first off, the reason for the podcast is really to encourage people to read, build their libraries, especially as people are reading less and less and being distracted with devices more and more, trying to create more readers, because reading has been foundational to everything I've done, whether it's the SEAL teams or now as an author myself. Reading's foundational to all of that.
Right.
And I want to ask you first off, because I've been telling this story for years in almost every interview, and it's about you. And so I'll be very embarrassed if this is not true, but people ask me about how I got started and that process. And I say I wrote my first book, and I immediately started the second one without a publishing deal because of the John Grisham story. And I say John Grisham wrote A Time to Kill first, and perhaps it didn't sell as well as he would have liked, but then he wrote The Firm. And he could have stopped after A Time to Kill and gone back to either law or the House of Representatives or wherever your path was going to take you. But instead, you wrote The Firm. And now we've gotten a John Grisham novel or two every year since. So is that story true?
Yes. A Time to Kill was published in 1989. And the small unknown press and brand new press in New York, and everybody else said no to it. And so we published it, and they printed 5,000 hardback copies. They had no money for publicity or distribution or promotion. I bought 1,000 of the 5,000 to try and sell, and I did sell them eventually the hard way. There was no contract for The Firm. The Firm I was writing it because when I finished A Time to Kill, I started writing my next book, and I was trying to finish The Firm. I did that in the fall of '89, sent it off to New York. Nobody wanted it for a while, and there was no publishing contract until we got this stroke of blind luck that I had nothing to do with, and a copy of the manuscript showed up in Hollywood, and we sold the film rights before we sold the book rights, and so that's how it got started. It's an incredible story, and again, I had nothing to do with it. I didn't even know about it until the very last moment, and once we had a movie deal, the publishers showed up at that point, and we had a nice contract with Doubleday, and they published the last 50 books. That's my longtime publisher. So, you got to have a bit of luck. Yes, you got to have some talent and some pluck, but you got to have a little bit of luck too. So that's a true story.
Well, that's great, because I've been telling it for the last 8 or 9 years. I'm certainly glad that it's true. How did the agent thing work? Did you need back in 1988, 89 for the first book? Do you have an agent for A Time to Kill, or did you get one between then and The Firm, or how did that work?
Unlike today, back in those days, pre-internet, you could submit a manuscript to both agents and to publishers or editors, and I was doing that. And I actually made a list of 15 agents and 15 publishers. Some I'd heard about, most I had not. I was just throwing darts, and I had my secretary, well, I had a little office and a secretary, and so we would send out the first three chapters in a summary, a cover letter to five agents and five editors. This is 1980, 87. Yeah, so a long time ago. And it was very standard back then, the submission rejection routine that we all went through back then. And that's how you got published if you were lucky. And they started, they would send them right back. The rejection started immediately. But I was a lawyer. I'm busy in my law office, and I was in the state legislature and politics, and my wife was having babies, so life was kind of crazy and good. We had a good life, and I treated the rejections as just kind of a part of the process, and everybody gets rejected, and so I knew that, and I said, okay, I'm not gonna cry over this. I'm gonna treat each rejection as another step closer to getting published, and that was our attitude. And finally got an agent. An agent called one day, and he signed me up. And we had a great career for about 6 or 7 years until he passed away suddenly. And I have another agent now. But you had to have an agent. And today, as you know, you got to have an agent because publishers will not read stuff that doesn't come from agents. So it's just the way it is. And there's so much online submissions now through agents. So it's a different world now.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't know that at the beginning. Coming out of the SEAL teams, wrote my first book my last about year and a half in the military, and I looked in the back of all the books that I was reading back then in the same genre, and I saw that a few of them were thanking someone named Emily Bestler at Emily Bestler Books, Atria, Simon and Schuster. So specifically Vince Flynn, and I thought, okay, well Emily Bestler will be my editor and publisher. And I had no connection to publishing or Hollywood or anything else, but I managed to get it to her. She actually read it, loved it, went out to New York, I think just to make sure I wasn't a crazy person, had some coffee together for a couple hours. And she said, I really want this, but you need an agent. I can't do a deal without an agent. And I said, oh, well, how do I get one of those? And she said, well, I'll introduce you to four and they'll know I already want it. So they'll do the deal with you. So I interviewed four and picked one, and she's my agent today. But I do understand that's very unusual in these times.
That's very unusual now. But you hear those stories all the time. They ask us, published writers, how do you do it? What's the secret? What's the next step? There's some rough ideas about how to do it, but there's so many exceptions to every rule. My agent has he's been with him for 30 years now, but he has a big agency in New York, and a lot of young agents, and they really make it fun being around the young people, especially when it comes to technology. But they're always looking. They troll the internet looking for literary publications or short stories or whatever. Always looking for somebody new, and they're very aggressive about it. And that's not just them; it's the industry. And I tell writers. Aspiring writers all the time. It looks impossible. It looks like it's never going to happen. I felt that way when I was writing. But every year we have a new wave of debut authors. The industry needs new talent every year. We need new bestsellers every year. And if you're writing something good, you're going to get noticed eventually. If you don't get noticed after years of submissions and rejections, maybe you need to think about doing something else. But if you love what you're doing, you write what you're writing, don't quit for a long time. Somebody's going to see it sooner or later.
I love that. I love that. My mom was a librarian, so I grew up with books and a love of reading. So that's
great. Look at it. Is that your library?
Thank you. It is. It is. So my wife put this together for me as I was writing at the local library, but then people found out I was writing there and started to show up and knock on the door of the little study rooms because they're all glass down here in Park City. So she had this built for me, but I've already outgrown it. And I'll show you real quick here. I got it's mostly books, except and it's because it's a disaster right now. But there's the bar over there, but I never get to use it. People bring me bottles of whiskey and things like that I mentioned in the books to the book signings and things, and so they just stack up. But I'm so busy, I never get a chance to partake. So I should have just made that whole wall books because I've already outgrown it. So, but I do love to be surrounded by books.
I like the idea of a bar in your library. I've never done that. I like that. I may give that a try. But,
I don't know if it's a good. You have a pretty good routine working right now. You might not want to switch things up. It's working out.
Writers are known to partake too much. Where writers and alcoholism has a very long, colorful, and sad history. So you really got to. And people ask me about that all the time, and I say, well, look. I come from Mississippi, which has a long tradition of really hell-raising drunk writers, great writers. Why is that? And I said, I can't explain that, but I do know that it is a very undisciplined lifestyle. And you know what discipline is. I learned it through law school and practicing law and working hard. But if you miss a deadline, no big deal. If you wake up with a hangover, you can take a day off. You can start writing at noon. I mean, it's an undisciplined way of living, and you can start drinking every afternoon anytime you want to. You don't have a boss if you're lucky, and so that kind of feeds into this. Then you hear writers say, "Well, we have to, we carry the burdens of the world. We have to explore all these human emotions, and it's a heavy burden. So give me another drink." So there are all kinds of excuses. When you want to drink, you can find any excuse you want.
Yeah, I don't think I have that luxury yet. I'm still just every day working, grinding, building, trying to reach more readers, build the audience, doing some screenwriting, doing all these different things. So I feel like right now I don't have the luxury to be able to start drinking at noon. I hope to work my way that direction though, at least have the option. Not that I'm going to do it, but I'd like to have the option.
I don't do it. I can't drink at noon. Even a glass of wine. When I'm at home in Charlottesville, where I live now, I don't. I have some wine at 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
But you start drinking at noon, even a glass of wine. The afternoon's shot. Yeah, I got to go take a long nap. Okay, so I don't drink every day, but I drink wine, almost every night. I enjoy that and stay away from the hard stuff. I see you get the hard stuff there.
I do, but it really does go unopened. My wife and I enjoy a glass of wine at the end of the day, kids to bed, sit on the couch, talk about the day, the future, that sort of thing. So that's pretty much what it is for us as well.
For over 22 years, Bravo Company has been trusted by professionals who go into harm's way. Because failure is not an option. Built to the highest standards, BCM rifles are made for those who demand reliability, precision, and grit. No gimmicks, no shortcuts, just tools forged for the fight. BCM, trusted by warriors, tested by time. Go to BravoCompanyUSA.com to learn more.
But speaking of that discipline, growing up, you had a bunch of odd jobs before college and law school. What did you learn from those jobs? Was it that, hey, I don't want to do these types of jobs for the rest of my life, hence law school? Or what was that path from, let's say, high school, college into law school?
Well, those early jobs, like any other kid, I like to have the money in my pocket. I like to have a little spending money, and my origins and background very very modest. My father was a cotton farmer in Arkansas until he lost everything. He got a job as a bulldozer operator with a company. We moved all around the South, and so until I was 12, 13, 14 years old, things were very tight. We had a lot of kids, big house, wonderful childhood, wonderful parents, but there's never any spare money. And I always liked the idea of a little spare cash in my pocket. Always looking for a job, from watering rose bushes to picking pecans, picking cotton, which I did as a 5-year-old. I think one thing my parents instilled in us was they had to work hard to get ahead. They were far behind when they got started. They worked hard. They saved their money, and I learned that lesson. It's not nobody's going to give you anything. You got to do it yourself. And I always had some kind of part-time job. I paid for half of college and law school. My parents they had 5 kids. They wanted all 5 of us to go to college. We all had that opportunity, and they helped as much as they could. And so, but it was just the determination to work hard. Then I was inspired by some really great lawyers who were the old-fashioned Southern trial lawyer, the lawyer who could take a criminal case to trial or an injury case to trial, and I really aspired to be that. Well, those guys work 15 hours a day. Trial work is extremely tense and filled with pressure, and so I aspired to do that. So I didn't mind putting in the hours. When I started writing, I didn't have a lot of time to do it, and I had to choose a certain time of the day to go sit down, same place, same time every day, and write one page, at least one page. And I learned that discipline that way, and because I realized if I didn't do that, the book was not going to be finished. In my first novel, I set it down several times and didn't want to go back. And my wife always nudged me to go finish the book. But I learned if you don't do it every day, unless you're on vacation, I mean, we all, travel and have fun. But if you're at home and you're working, if you don't do it every day, it's not going to get done. With anything else in life, if you do a little bit every day, it's going to add up. You got to get in the habit of doing it if it's something constructive, and you get in the habit of doing it, and it's going to add up. And before you know it, with writing, a page a day is 300 pages a year. That's either a book or you're close to it. And so I just kind of learned the discipline of doing that. And once it paid off with the firm, I thought, I kind of like this. I kind of like selling books. I kind of like these royalty checks. And so I'm going to keep writing. I'm going to keep writing, working hard. I had no idea I'd be doing it 30 years later, but I wrote 1,000 words this morning, Jack, and that's my daily goal every morning at 7 o'clock is to write 1,000 words. And I knew I had this interview coming up, one after this, and so I planned my day around. But it's still the early morning hours and the discipline of doing it every day. And it's still fun. If it wasn't fun, I wouldn't be doing it.
Well, I love that on your website, for those listening, there's the whole list of your writing process and a video that goes along with that, starting at 7 on January 1st, going to noon and getting those words in. And I'm gonna ask you a little bit more about that later. But I feel like I've always felt that I always knew I was going to be a writer after the military. I was called to the military first, and then I knew I was going to write thrillers, the same kind I was reading growing up, which includes yours. But if I'd become a lawyer, I think I'd be writing legal thrillers. If I was a doctor, I think I'd be writing medical thrillers. If I was a police officer, I'd be writing some sort of crime type thriller right now. But happened to be the military, so it's a very natural move into these political thrillers with a military protagonist, because I can bring those feelings and emotions that I had in real life to the fictional narrative. And I'm wondering if you do that. Do you tap back into those days as a trial lawyer, or those days in the Mississippi House of Representatives, to bring the feelings and emotions behind things you were involved in to your characters?
Sure. I mean, it's you write about what you know, and I could not go out. I could probably go do the research and write about Navy SEALs and military things like that. It wouldn't be authentic. I couldn't write about medical stuff. I couldn't write about architecture. I couldn't write about a lot of things. I don't have to. The law is so vast and filled with so many great stories and characters. And that's still my world. If I had not been a lawyer, I would never have written the first word, because I was inspired by this courtroom drama that I had created, and that became A Time to Kill. And so I kept thinking, that's thinking in terms of lawyers. The book you're reading now, The Widow, comes out in October, and it's strictly a small town lawyer in Virginia who gets in a lot of trouble because of a will he prepares for an old woman with plenty of money. And so that's the story. I'm not going to spoil anything, but you write about what you know. I can read a book today, and I can tell you it's a legal thriller or a legal setting. I can almost within the first 5 pages tell you if that writer is a lawyer. Mm-hmm. There's an element of authenticity that goes with what you write, and it's very difficult to immerse yourself into the research for Navy SEALs, and for me to write it like I know what I'm talking about. I wouldn't even try that. I would not even begin to try that. And I'm too busy writing the legal books anyway.
Well, you're doing pretty well with those. So
yeah, something's working. Something's working.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I know what you mean exactly by that, because I read and from reading this book, latest one, The Widow, that you were an attorney, because of just those little sentences that you talk about how lawyers think, how this particular one in this, how he relates to his other law partners or law school classmates who have gone on to maybe bigger and better things, if you're looking at it that way. But I just love those little lines in there. And then some of the other ones, of course, that don't have anything to do with being a lawyer, like this one. She drove like a 90-year-old who'd been a lousy driver 70 years earlier. I just love those. I mean, I highlighted that one, and then continue on. He walked her to her car and watched her drive away on the wrong side of the road, put on the brake. I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, it's incredible. I absolutely love it. I mean, I draw such inspiration from this, and I mean, it's just incredible the way that you've done it. And it's been like that from the beginning. I found you, like many did, with The Firm. Read the book before the movie just because of my love of books. So heard about it probably from my mom. Got the book. I think I have it was paperback right there.
Oh yeah, the green book. The green book.
There it is. And then later it had another cover here, of course, many different editions, but there's Tom Cruise on the cover of that one right there. But found you through that. Absolutely loved it, of course, watched the movie and immediately got A Time to Kill and was blown away by A Time to Kill. I love that book. I still remember it to this day, what it felt like to read it. I know exactly where I was that summer that I was reading that one where I found that. And I mean, I'm glad it didn't go this way, but you almost inspired me to go to law school. But I'm glad I stuck to my path, to my guns, and went to the military.
I'm
That was
so
the right
glad
path.
to hear that. I hear so many people say, "I read your books; they inspired me to go to law school." I said, that was not the purpose. Okay, it was not my intention. I'm not anti-lawyer, but I don't think so many folks should go to law school and then go practice law. It's a great body of knowledge to have if you use it wisely and properly. And a lot of people don't do that. But I've inspired a lot of kids to go to law school. So I'm not proud of that.
That's true. My dad was an attorney and did like some real estate law, that sort of thing. So it was interesting reading the book here. And growing up, were you reading growing up, or did you find books later on? What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, when we were kids in the early 60s, television was still black and white. And my mom never cared for television. She didn't let us watch a lot of television. And we moved around a lot in small towns in Mississippi and Arkansas as my dad was getting transferred around. Again, it's a wonderful childhood because almost every summer there was a new town. And so it really shaped, my personality as far as making friends and fitting in and that kind of stuff. But when we moved to a new town, the first thing we would do, my mom would have us in church to join the First Baptist Church next Sunday, all cleaned and scruffed up and starch and all that, and then with little bow ties on. And then the next step was to go to the library to see how many books we could check out at one time. And then we'd go to the Little League ballpark to see what it looked like. And I had two brothers and a sister, older, a younger sister now. And we could judge the quality of life in any new small town by the library and the number of books we could check out and the Little League baseball field. And we'd take the books home, just, stacks of them, and we would pass those books around and just read. And it was a big deal. My mom read to us. My mom, she didn't have to push us. It was just part of our lives, reading. And I had some really good teachers when I was a kid. In the fourth grade especially, Miss Greenwood, all she talked about was reading. And she would give awards, prizes for the most books in a week or the most books in a month. And so it was just all this, great background stuff that went into reading. I never thought about writing. I never took a creative writing course. I never dreamed of being a writer. It never crossed my mind. I was going to be a lawyer, then maybe a judge or something. But I was 30 years old before I started writing the first book. And I did that because I didn't know how to write a novel. I never tried before. But I'd read a lot of them, and I knew how good suspense might work. But I had this idea for a courtroom drama that was very autobiographical. It was, I was that young lawyer in a small town, and dreaming of the big trial, the big courtroom scene with a packed courtroom, and I'm the star, all that kind of stuff, and you get it, and all the racial issues that are piled on top of A Time to Kill, and the small town flavor, the people that's where I grew up, and so that book kind of really came from the heart. Didn't know what I was doing. But got through it and then got lucky and got it published, and here we are. So that's my background with reading. In law school, killed my reading almost. It was just because suddenly you got to read everything else. You got to read a stack of cases to read every night, and it took a while after law school to get back into the to rhythm of reading. My wife's an English major, and so she's always been a voracious reader. And then we have two kids, and luckily they picked it up a little bit later in life. In college, they started reading, and now both of them are huge readers. So books are real important around our house.
The 6-hour P365 Fuse, the fusion of capability and concealment. Its 21+1 capacity meets a razor-thin 1-inch grip module for unmatched versatility and shootability. Fuse delivers the accuracy and grit of a full-size pistol right out of the box. Optic-ready, compact footprint stainless steel slide with aggressive serrations. 4.3-inch carbon steel barrel, 21-round magazines, All the benefits of a full-size pistol fused with the concealability of a compact. A true crossover carry has arrived. The ultimate fusion of capability and concealment. Fuse by 6 Hour.
I'm worried about with our kids. I mean, I read to my kids every night when they were young, just like my parents did to me. They're surrounded by books. I'm an author, and somehow it hasn't taken yet. And my hope is that maybe audiobooks are that gateway to physical books for maybe that younger generation through podcasts, because you're listening to something and it's the same medium, and it's very maybe comfortable to go and get the audiobook of something for a generation that hasn't grown up with books and reading. That's my hope anyway.
Yeah, it's something to worry about because publishers are very concerned about young readers, and they seem to be declining in number. Uh, there are all these horror stories about video games and how there are so many of them and how addictive they are, and it's all kids want to do is play video game. Not just kids, but adults too are playing, all these video games, and not all these games are good for you. Not all of them are healthy. And I've never seen one, so I'm not going to play them. But the younger readers have us worried. And at the same time, the trend for the past 30 or 40 years has been fewer books are read each year. The Americans buy fewer books a year. They read fewer books a year, really compared to the Europeans, and some of the Asian countries. And so it's a concern. And not sure what we can do about it. We're both authors. I think all we can do is keep trying to write books that people enjoy reading, and promoting literacy and promoting reading in libraries and bookstores, supporting bookstores. So, but there are a lot of concerns in the publishing industry.
Oh yeah, did you see the is it the Washington Post article? I think the Times republished it, but about 2 maybe 3 weeks ago now, about the decline in just readers across the country, and how we're expected to consume so much more so fast, and that was a big part of that article. But yeah, I'm stepping into this at probably not the best time in history one could step into publishing, even when it comes to the movie adaptations and that sort of a thing. I think you hit it you didn't do a bad job as far as timing with Hollywood and readership.
Jack, great question, because those movies are 30 years old. When The Firm, Pelican Brief, Client, Time to Kill, Chamber, Rainmaker, Runaway Jury, those are early 1990 movies, 30 years ago. I have not had a movie adapted in the past 20 years. We have a bunch of TV deals going now. The Rainmaker series just came out a couple of weeks ago. It's the first one that's come out ever. We have all these option deals for TV series, and they just don't work. And I think that area has been saturated in the past 15 years because of streaming, which we all enjoy. We all enjoy a good TV series to stream, to binge on. But that's been, a huge part of the market. People are just watching more television, and they're playing more video games, and it's harder and harder for me to get stuff adapted to film and to TV.
Yeah, we actually went back in January with our youngest and watched. He was about that age. He's about to go to high school here. But we watched all your movies from the 90s, all those ones you just mentioned. We sat down and watched them with him, and it was so great because it's almost a time capsule going back to those times. And I remember what it was like to see those in the theater and to have read the books and be so excited about it. I mean, you had the biggest stars of the 90s, the biggest directors of the 90s, the biggest films of the 90s. I mean, it's incredible. For those that, I don't know who hasn't seen them, but of course, Tom Cruise is in The Firm. Then we had The Pelican Brief, Julia Roberts, Denzel Washington, The Client, Susan Sarandon, Tommy Lee Jones, The Time to Kill, of course, Matthew McConaughey, Sandra Bullock, Samuel L. Jackson, The Chamber, Gene Hackman, Chris O'Donnell, Rainmaker, Matt Damon, Danny DeVito, and a host of other supporting characters that are all huge names. I mean, you couldn't pick better casts for these things. They were incredible.
And you know what? I had nothing to do with it. I never got involved with the film. I didn't want to. I don't know how to make movies. I'm not going to learn. I write books. I write novels. But it was such a golden era. We were in the middle of it. We got caught up in the middle. Obviously, it was so much fun. So unbelievable things that were happening 30 years ago. And we have great nostalgia looking back. That was a fun time. We'd like to do more movies now, but I can't make that happen. I can't do a single thing today as a writer. The book you've got, The Widow, comes out in October. I can't do a thing to get that film made. If I said to somebody, to some production company, if I said, okay, I'll give you the film rights, which I'm not going to do, I'll get a little something for it. I'll write the screenplay for free. which I'm not going to do. But even if I said that, if I did those things, that would not move the needle one bit.
Yeah.
That would not help it go. You've got to have, I don't know what the secret is. You've got to have a producer or a director who loves the material,
Yeah.
and sometimes you have an actor or an actress who really wants to do it. That helps, but even then, it's a very frustrating business. And my frustration has it reached a point several years ago where I said, okay, stop worrying about it. I can't control it. All I can control is the next novel. And so I'm much happier today. I would love to see the Rainmaker TV show came out 2 weeks ago. It's a good show, fun to watch, great cast. I had nothing to do with it, and was happy to stay away from it. And I've had my fun with the Rainmaker 30 years ago, and the TV series is good. It's very popular. It's working. I'm happy. I'm going to stay away from it.
Yeah, it's probably wise. I got very fortunate in that someone gave a galley of my first book to Chris Pratt before it even hit shelves. He read it, loved it, called it, wanted to option it. Director wanted it at about the same time, and they knew each other, so they did a handshake deal. Said, "Hey, let's do this together." And now we're all dear friends. And my prequel series just came out actually yesterday on Prime Video. So it's fun. I learn a lot. Doing some of the screenwriting stuff now that I'm involved with. It's a lot of extra work and it's not that much money, but I learn a lot from it with those constraints because we have no constraints really for when we're writing a novel. We can do anything we want. And then, of course, screenwriting, now we have budgetary constraints, actor availability constraints, location, all sorts of constraints. Tell a story in a 1 hour block
Yeah.
that has an arc in that 1 hour block, but also an overarching 8 hour arc as well because you have 8 episodes. So it's very interesting to work in that environment. Hopefully that makes me better at the other, but it's interesting. The Hollywood side of the house is interesting.
It really is, and see, I got so spoiled many years ago to working alone with no collaboration, with nobody giving me notes, with nobody telling me what they think I should do with the book, and that's still the way I work. And so when I get in a situation where somebody wants to buy the rights to a novel for film or television, they'll always say, "Okay, we're going to do a spec screenplay and tell us what you think." I hate reading those. I'm not going to read those and give my notes to somebody, and they almost always ignore them, whatever I say anyway. So, and I don't want to read somebody else's notes, about it. So it's just easier for me to stay away from that and let somebody else do. Somebody knows what they're doing. Let them make the movies. I don't care, but like you, I would love to see everything adapted. I would love to see every book adapted because we all enjoy watching movies and television. We all enjoy that, okay, if it's done right. And also, as we know, quietly, it sells a lot of books. If you have a big movie or a big TV show, you're going to sell some books, and the publishers love that. So, and also, if you look at the early movies that you mentioned, they're almost immortal. They're on television somewhere tonight. They're on all the time. I walk through the den, twice a year and see one of those movies, see Denzel on television in the Pelican Brief. And I think, God, was that really 30 years ago? And it's a nostalgic moment. My wife and I always have a laugh doing that, but the movies are immortal.
And they're so good. You'd think out of those that we just mentioned there, the ones that came out in the 90s, you'd think you'd have one that didn't work in there, but they're all fantastic and they all hold up. We watched it. It's so great to watch them again, just like we did a few months ago, like I mentioned. But that's really unusual to have so many in a row and have so many winners in a row like that. I can't think of anyone who's really done that. I mean, maybe the Bond films or something like that, but they're a different animal. But something like that you've done with a different story each time, different characters each time, all based on your work, and not to have one that doesn't work. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, well, I didn't do it. Somebody else did it.
Well, they had the base material. They had the good base material. And when we talk about A Time to Kill, we've seen Jake Brigance here a few times over the years now, one short story and other novels as well. And you mentioned how that character, that first book was semi-autobiographical. Do you think that means the most to you out of all the books, or does the firm, because that launched everything? And then also you held on to those rights, I think, for a little longer. You wanted to make sure that one in particular was done right. So you did have a little bit more to say as far as the casting goes with that particular novel. Is that right?
Yeah, I withstood the temptation with Time to Kill for a number of years, just out of fear they would, I wouldn't like it. Joel Schumacher directed The Client, and I got to know him pretty well. And we didn't hang out because he was in LA and I don't go out there. But and he had a good screenwriter, Kiva Goldsman. And so they finally talked me into it. I said, okay, let me see the script. So yeah, I had more input with that. But Joel, I knew Joel from the client, he was going to stick to the source material. There were not going to be major changes in the story. That's all a writer can ask for. But sometimes the changes are good. Sometimes what they come up with, every movie I've seen based on my books, every adaptation, at one point during that movie, or more than one, I would say, gee, I wish I'd thought of that.
I did the same thing.
I
Yes.
wish I'd put that. Wish I'd put that in the book. That's a great idea. I wish I'd put that in the book. So it's just, it's just you're dealing with very creative people, and I got lucky way back then with great directors, actors, screenwriters, producers way back then, 30 years ago. But Joel finally convinced me that he could do A Time to Kill right, and it's a great story. He had this all-star cast: Samuel Jackson, Sandra Bullock, Kiefer Sutherland, Donald Sutherland, Oliver Platt. I can't even think of all of them. And he had just Ashley Judd. He had everybody lined up, and they were on site in Mississippi, on the set with 100 people there, technicians and artists, whatever, get ready to film. They had no leading man. Jake had not been cast, and I had veto rights over that character, the actor, and so we could not agree. And Joel and I got crossways. He mentioned a couple of actors I didn't think would fit, good actors, but I didn't think they would fit. So the lawyers were involved, and the clock was ticking. And so at the last moment, Joel said, "Hang on, time out. I've got an idea. I know this one kid, young guy. He's been in one movie called Dazed and Confused." He said, "Have you heard of Matthew McConaughey?" And I said, "No, I don't. I don't watch a lot of movies." And I said, "I didn't never heard of it." He said, "Let me get him. I'm going to pull him in off the set, another movie, for a quick 5-minute screen test, off the cuff, and I'll send you the tape." And I said, "Great." He did that. The old box, what, 8 track? No, what kind of tapes?
Beta or VHS or
Yeah,
something?
VHS tapes, and they FedExed it overnight. This is 1996, I guess, about the time the internet hit. And Joel sent me by FedEx the VHS tape. My wife and I were waiting at the door, and we popped it in the television to watch Matthew. And after about 5 seconds, my wife said, "I think I'm in love."
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I said, he's got it. He's got the right accent. He's from Texas. And he's so charismatic. And we called Joel and we said, "Done. Great job. He's going to be wonderful." And we were thrilled with Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, so fantastic. And launched his really career. I mean, it's
Yeah.
he did in that film so good. And I think was there a still or was in the video that you saw, was he smoking a cigar or
Yeah.
something?
Had a cigar. Had a cigar going, coat and tie in his office, ad-libbing some lines. But he's just so magnetic, and a great voice, great accent, and great looking. And it was so much fun watching Matthew grow into the role. And I went to the set more times than any other movie in Mississippi just to be there, and always welcome, and always never had any advice for anybody. But to watch him grow into it, to watch the success of it, and to watch him go on and won an Oscar. He's always had a very special place in our hearts.
It's incredible. And if someone hasn't seen that movie, they should get the book and see the movie. But in this one too, we talked about notes on scripts. And I think this one, you always like to know where you're going.
Yeah.
Know the ending before you start on that track. I do as well. I have a very similar process in that respect. I also have a computer that is not, I mean, it's connected to the internet, but it doesn't only so it can do updates to Word. It doesn't have an email that anyone else has. It has an email that I can send myself notes on, but no one else can. So I'm not distracted by anything. So we have a similar process in that respect. But in this one, I think you got a note or two on the ending. Is that because this is a first? It's not. I wouldn't say it's a whodunit. But it's similar. And you're trying to figure out if he did it, type of a thing, from what I can gather. But I think the ending, your wife gave you a note, and then so did maybe your editor. Is that right?
I wouldn't call them notes. My wife yelled at me, and my editor agreed with her. And so, no, I don't. I don't start a novel unless I know the ending. That's just been one of my rules. I don't know. Writers are famous for having these brilliant ideas, and we all do that, and we jump into it and start writing. And after 50,000 words, you realize, I don't know where I'm going. And it all falls to pieces. I don't do that. But a lot of writers do, and I'm not going to waste all that time. I want to know the beginning with a hook in the middle to sustain the tension, and then leading up to an ending that I hope is not predictable. That's, some clever ending. That's the basic storytelling. And so with The Widow, I got to the end and I was really worried about the ending. And this was January. I was way past due. And I showed it to my wife and she said, this is not going to work. And I sent it to my agent slash editor, David Gurnett in New York. He said, this is not going to work. And I said, okay, give me 30 days because I have another idea. And so, but it's the first time I've actually done a real mystery. It's not who done it, but did he do it? The accused, the lawyer's accused, did he do it? And we have that mystery angle to it. I'd never written a mystery before, pure mystery. So I had to take a little advice from my agent and say, look, we need to drop some clues in here along the way, like all mystery writers do. And so I had to go through that process, and it was educational for me, but also a real challenge. And when the book was finished, I knew it worked.
Yeah. Well, how far I am right now, I absolutely love it. Of course, I'm just hooked by the writing right from the get-go. And you mentioned being done with this one in January. So usually you're a January 1st to July, but then at some point you start doing two a year. So what happens when you're doing two a year?
It gets all messed up. It gets all screwed up. The whole year gets screwed up when I do too. For years I came out every year on March the 1st, and that was my day. And nobody else would come out March the 1st. It's the dead time of the winter, after Christmas. Nobody's in the bookstores, and bookstores loved it because it produced traffic. And I had the bestseller list all to myself, #1 for several weeks, and I just loved March. And Doubleday kept pushing a little bit to do a Christmas book, and I don't mean a Christmas book, a book at Christmas. Yeah, well, that's a whole different story. But I know a novel, a big legal
Gotcha.
thriller at Christmas time. And they finally showed me some numbers that convinced me that, all the big people come out for the Christmas market. 1/3 of all books are sold at Christmas time. They had all these. I said, okay, we'll readjust the schedule. And so for the past probably 15 years, it's been October, the third Tuesday in October, like this year. Um, but it took that to change my schedule. So for me to start January 1, which is my goal every year, finish by July 1, then they publish late October. That's still a breakneck schedule, okay? For them, it puts enormous pressure on the publisher, even pressure on me. So I kicked back a year and bought some extra time. I think COVID did it maybe, and I just readjusted my schedule to finish sometime like a year in advance. They want the books now a year in advance. Amazon wants your next title with some artwork for the jacket a year in advance, and we can't do that. We give them all we got, but I have a hard time with titles, and so I can't give you a title for next. This is almost September. I can't give you a title for next year's novel. I know what the story is, but I don't have a title. But there's more and more pressure every year from booksellers, from Costco, from Amazon, from Barnes and Noble, to do it earlier. So that's how my schedule got reworked.
Interesting. I have a similar thing that happened. My one that comes out here in October, not your week, earlier. We were going to definitely avoid your week. It comes out October 7th, but it became more of historical fiction, meaning I went back to 1968 and writing every character through the lens of 1968, meaning that they could only have a perspective on a certain event or situation based on their life experience up to 1968 when I wasn't alive yet. I thought I knew a lot about the 60s, a lot about the Vietnam War, a lot about the CIA and KGB and GRU during that time frame. Realized that as I started that I really had just scratched the surface. So usually I come out in May, June, and I like that time for me, but it got pushed because I was late, just because I miscalculated how long it was going to take to essentially write historical fiction. And now that's coming out October 7th. And we'll see how it goes then. But also I'm also going to use that to get back on track with some other projects in the next year so that I can get back on schedule because things just got so hectic. So I can get back on track and not put as much pressure as you talked about on the publishers and everyone else who's waiting for that title.
I want to give a very special shout out to SKB Cases for partnering on this year's Cry Havoc pub boxes. I love SKB cases. I use them for my rifles, pistols, shotguns, bows. The kids use them for their musical instruments. We use them here for the audio-visual equipment. There are thousands of ways to use SKB cases. And in my case, see what I did there? I use it for my books. And right here, Cry Havoc, available in hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. SKB, thanks so much.
So the Innocence Project, for those who don't know what that is, I know that's important to you, and I just wanted you to hit that real quick before we jump off.
Well, my first nonfiction book was The Innocent Man in 2006, and it took me into the world of wrongful convictions, and I realized that there's so many of them, and there's so many innocent people in prison. And once you meet some of these people and you can't get them out, you can't help them get out, or once you meet the exonerees who have spent 30 years for somebody else's crime, you're never the same. You're never going to be the same. And being on the board of a couple of those innocence advocacy groups, I know a lot of the exonerees and I know a lot of guys who are still in prison. And so it keeps you awake at night. So I'm still driven to help those people.
It's incredible. You said it's fairly easy to send an innocent person to prison. It's almost impossible to get them out. Yeah. And incredible. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. It's been such an honor. I really appreciate it. And thank you for everything. And right here, The Widow. Here we go. October.
Thanks, Jack. Enjoy it. Take care. See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This episode of the Danger Close podcast is brought to you by Cry Havoc. From New York Times #1 bestselling author Jack Carr. Cry Havoc, a Tom Reese thriller. Order now.
Watch a Cry Havoc teaser here, or watch another episode of the podcast here.